Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Newsmakers podcast. This is Kyle Gargaro, editorial director of the ACHR News. Today, I want to talk about soft skills and their importance to HVAC contractors. To do that, we're bringing in Steve Kasha of Kasha Communications to return to the podcast and share his knowledge. Thanks for joining us today, Steve.
Hello, Kyle. Good to be here.
I guess just start off with so I make sure we're all on the same page. I think we all know what we're talking about when we say soft skills. Why don't you explain it a little bit to our audience, if you don't mind?
Sure. Soft skills are skills such as showing up on time, cleaning up afterwards, listening well, empathy, where you park your truck. It's the skills that is mostly common sense, skills mostly taught at home by our mom and dad, and the skills that help to propel a person's career upward. Much research in human resources has indicated that a person's upward mobility within any organization is more enhanced by soft skills than their technical skills.
Now, is that something specifically, or maybe it's both, contractors should be looking for when they're hiring people, or they should be cognizant, I have to teach this when they get here?
No, that's something we should be looking for. You know, we've all seen the indications that we should be hiring for attitude and not for skills, because you can train skills. You can teach someone to diagnose and troubleshoot and install, but a person's attitude goes a lot deeper than that. So the attitude may have its roots in childhood or some other year-long issues that are difficult to change. So we want to get people into an organization with the right attitude, with the right soft skills, and we look for that. You know, many managers will hire on their gut feeling about a person, on their nonverbal skills, whether or not they make eye contact or whether or not they're smiling, and how well they hold up their body posture. And many of those soft skills are great indicators for the way an employee is going to perform.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. You can pick up on a lot of those in interviews. I guess I was thinking about anyone can fool us for 45 minutes or an hour and a half, however long the interview is going to be as far as attitude. Is there kind of a secret sauce on how to get to the truth in these interviews?
Sure. Well, you want to ask specific questions such as, tell me about a problem you've solved recently, and then stop talking. The key to stop talking after you ask a question is the next person who speaks is going to have some explaining to do. And asking that question about a problem the person resolved recently is going to give you some clues into their critical thinking ability, their ability to discern and size up a problem. And that's what you're looking for, regardless of whether a person is out in the field doing troubleshooting work or on the phone, listening to a customer vent. Both service situations require critical thinking skills, right, which is the skill that enables a professional to get to the root cause. Right. So over the phone, a customer might be yelling or complaining. That's not the problem. The problem is what is causing the customer to behave that way. See, that's the root cause. And critical thinking enables a person to say, well, let me spend a little more time listening, being empathetic, and eventually the person is going to hand the situation over to me so I can ask specific qualifying questions. That's critical thinking.
Okay. And I like the idea of talking less. I've heard that before, talking less in interviews, because as long as you're people tend to be uncomfortable with silence. So if you're silent, odds are the person answering the question is going to keep on talking, and eventually they'll get to the truth, right?
You said it, Kyle. That awkward pause after a question is asked is just what it is. It's a little awkward. A good manager has learned to ask a question, then smile, make eye contact, and wait patiently.
Now, would you advise for maybe to bring people back for second interviews, or have a different person, like maybe the first interview with one person, second interview with another person, to kind of get different perspectives on if this person is a fit culturally and has the soft skills you were talking about?
Sure, since many managers go with their gut feeling during interviews, it's good to get another manager involved. This way, you're getting another objective perspective. So maybe you'll get someone who's in charge of finance to do an interview, someone unrelated to service. I mean, finance people hire people also, and they may be looking for a different set of skills, but they've got a perspective a service manager may not have.
Right. Okay. And let's say one gets by the goalie and you hire someone in there and they aren't quite where you wanted them to be, soft skills, maybe more attitude than thinking quick on your feet. Is that something where you just kind of cut your losses and go your separate ways, or something you think that they can train them, teach them, speak to them, and turn that thing around?
Well, a new hire performance, if it's not up to par, should never be a surprise to that employee. So after the first day of employment, the manager should sit with that new hire and ask a question such as, so what did you observe today? And let the person just talk, because typically on the first day, they're either shadowing a seasoned employee, or they're listening to service calls, and get that person's perspective on things. Make that a standard practice. You do it after the first day, second day, third day, after the first week. And once the person starts to perform, they are already used to the manager follow-up. And that follow-up only takes about 5 minutes. But the new employee knows now my manager is going to be asking me questions. There should be a two-way exchange of information. So once the manager starts to see the performance, the manager is going to make some remarks where improvement might be necessary, and that should be conveyed right away. It should never be a surprise to an employee that they're going to be terminated or that they're on probation. There should always be an open dialogue between managers, and especially with new hires.
Got it. Wanted to kind of focus maybe a little about the attitude thing that you kind of mentioned before. How do contractors, especially let's say we're talking with techs here, how do contractors are really, like, you can be one thing in the office and then in the customer's, homeowner's home, you're a little different thing. Plus you might be good in the morning, but then when you're sitting here in 95-degree heat and it's about 4 o'clock, maybe your attitude is a little different than it was at the jump. How do contractors manage how their techs' attitudes are doing when they're out of sight?
Well, much of that has to do with the training. So in any job, whether you are doing install, maintenance, diagnostic work, the training is what's paramount. Often the training tends to focus on technical issues, but soft skills training should also be in there about the attitude. And the attitude part is going to be a result also of nutrition. So in these hot months, proper hydration, eating more whole foods, less processed foods, all of that comes into the factor also. And there should be an open dialogue, especially during the extreme heat season, between dispatch and technicians. And dispatch should be contacting a technician while they're en route. So how was that last job? And what do you think about the next job? And there should be an open dialogue. A dispatch can often get a reading from the tone of voice of a technician while they're on the way to a job. So it comes down to training, comes down to follow-up, and it also comes down to nutrition.
Okay, that's a good point. Can you kind of give me maybe the top mistake you see techs are making in soft skills that is almost like an easy fix that a contractor could introduce? Like, I can't believe I see this so many times.
Yes, it's the first impression, or the failure to make a positive first impression. So we're all familiar with the 80-20 rule, correct?
Yep.
And 80% of what a customer is going to perceive about a technician is what happens within the first few seconds of a service call. Pull up to a property, ring the doorbell, it's your smile. If a customer's house is uncomfortable, they're probably looking out the window. So how do you look when you exit the truck? Even though the last call you had might have been a nightmare, right now you are smiling. you're happy to be here. You're conveying an attitude that says, I love my job. And, so first impression is the thing where if every service call got that right, service calls would be so much easier to work along with.
And I assume once they get to the house, they should be ready to go up to that front door. A lot of times I'm sure they're finish things up or on the phone or doing paperwork, but you're right. If someone doesn't have an air conditioner, it's 100 and they see that van pull up and the person sits in there for, it might be 2 or 3 minutes, but I'm sure it feels like 15 for the homeowner. You have to get in pretty quick. Do you have kind of a time limit there?
Yeah, you might have to remain in your truck for an extra 10 to 20 seconds just to look at your clipboard. Make sure you're there to solve the right problem. If you've never been there before, look at the customer's last name. Do you know how to pronounce it? If you're not sure, you may want to ask. So perhaps 20 seconds in the truck. You can use one of those Listerine tabs. Make sure your breath is fresh. Exit the truck and head towards the house, and be ready to work.
How much small talk do you encourage? Obviously, you want to make the connection with the homeowner, but you want to be efficient for your boss, for your contractor, and also you don't want to waste anyone's time either. Is that just kind of maybe reading the situation?
Yeah, I would refrain from small talk as part of the first impression. Your first impression is to look professional, to look alert, enthusiastic, and ready to solve a problem. So you want to focus on the verification of the problem that I'm here to solve. Now, later on, if the customer wants to talk about small talk or something else, you're being invited into that conversation, but it's not something the technician should initiate.
Gotcha. And I'm assuming these days, maybe just steer clear of politics, even if you're asked. Just
good idea, Kyle.
How often should techs be getting a refresher on these soft skills? Obviously, for some people, just ingrained, and to your point, it's how they were raised and they'll always do it. But maybe some people, it's a little bit harder and needs kind of a refresher. Talk about that a little bit.
It should be every week.
Okay.
So with my clients, most of my clients have a meeting with their install team, a meeting with their technician team. They have a meeting with their telephone customer service reps. And I know the install teams and the technician teams are going to discuss technical issues, but there should also be a soft skill component to each one. And I send my clients a reminder list of topics they can include. Topics such as completing the paperwork 100% of the time. Don't make office workers have to call you to find out the serial number
Right.
or the date code of a circuit board. Topics such as being more efficient in the work we do. Topics such as preparation. Topics such as putting the tools back where they're supposed to go. All of these are soft skills. And then there's the usual attitude, communication, listening, empathy, all of those soft skills as well. I also send my clients a link to about a half a dozen YouTube videos of mine, something they can play for 90 seconds or 2 minutes during a meeting that has me talking about a soft skill, such as follow-up or being efficient or better listening. So I try to make it easy for my clients to have effective meetings.
That's a good point, because when we're talking about these meetings, you don't necessarily want one person up there droning on for 30 minutes or 45 minutes. So if they speak for 5 or 10, they hop in a video of you quickly, a minute or two, it kind of breaks it up, and a new voice is always good to kind of break through the clutter, right?
Absolutely. And it should be every week. Let employees understand the importance of these meetings. The meeting should not be perceived as a waste of time. It should be perceived as added value.
Okay. Now we're hearing a lot about, millennials versus Gen Xers, the boomers, and obviously the HVAC contractors, probably managing them all. Should they be kind of trained differently in soft skills to kind of break through their thought process to make sure it's hitting home for them? Do they have to be trained differently?
I don't think those varying generations need to be trained differently. As I mentioned, I create a lot of videos, 90 seconds, 2 minutes. So a 60-year-old or a 25-year-old can benefit from that same video. It's high tech, it's lively, it's informative. Now, when I'm out at the trade schools and I'm in the presence of 20 or 30, 19 and 20-year-olds, here's the future workforce. And the one thing I find, and I like it, is they ask me to define some of the words I use, which is real good. They're curious. They want to know what that word means. And that always reminds me to tell them about the importance of literacy. That while they are the generation that may have learned watching YouTube, there's no substitute for having to look at a schematic. You've got to know how to read. You've got to know how to read a service bulletin. And literacy is real important. So I bring that up as well. I'm a fan of the younger generation. I mean, I'm old enough to be their granddad. And when I'm in those classes, it is a lot of fun. I mean, they really want to know about some of the mistakes I made when I was their age. And it lets them know I'm not that different than they were, but I do see a curiosity out there. And when I was just speaking at a trade school in Alexandria, Virginia, a couple of weeks back, and I always give them my phone number, and I say, call me for anything. And you know it, Kyle, I may be driving someplace and I get a phone call from a trade school student.
You really?
He's got a question, and it's just fabulous knowing that they're curious. They really want to know.
Right.
So I like that. I think part of that curiosity again comes from being likable, and I'm not trying to sound like I'm very likable, but I tell stories.
You're likable, Steve. You're very likable.
Thank you. So I try to tell stories in such a way that they can understand I was once like them.
Sure.
That I was once a screwball, and I had to wise up later on. And I think if you can set that up early on in a relationship, they trust you.
Yeah, the way you're talking about these kids in the tech school sounds like they're real active listeners, right? Which is
they are.
Really is a soft skill that serves you well when you're in a customer's home.
Absolutely. I mean, I was when I was speaking to this trade school, in Alexandria, one of the students asked me, what was one of the worst service problems you had to solve? And I said, well, it was when I was a service manager and the situation became litigious. And I went on. And then after I told the story, this hand came up in the back of the room. What does litigious mean? And I had to explain when there's a legal situation and a customer secures a lawyer. And now you got something more serious than a usual service problem. So it's that type of curiosity I really like in the younger workforce.
Well, not only the curiosity, but it's also not be embarrassed to ask questions. Which in the HVAC world, I mean, you're going to have to ask 1,000 questions, and you have to be someone who is self-confident enough to do that, I suppose.
Yeah, you do.
How do you can you teach active listening, or is that another thing that you just have to see in the interview? And if they don't have it, maybe they're not right for you.
Listening is a skill that can be improved. People have to exercise it. So during an interview, you may want to ask a question about your company's website because the candidate said they got to review the website first, and you want to know something about their content retention.
Mm-hmm.
How much information did they retain from the website? So when was our company founded? And then you stop and wait.
Right.
And just wait for the answer.
Right.
And so content retention is a subset of listening, and listening and hearing are often confused to be the same, but hearing is a subset of listening. Right. Listening requires lots of mental energy to keep our mind active and attentive. So it's what you do to stay energetic while your mind wants to drift off to something else. Right. And you're staying focused and saying, let me think about that later. Let me stay focused to what this person is saying right here and now. And that's what active listening is.
Gotcha. One more question on the interview process, I guess. Obviously, you know this as well as HVAC contractors having a hard time finding people to get in your business. So I'm assuming when they're sitting in front of people, you almost want that person to work out. You want to see what you want to see because you need to fill these positions. Kind of talk the mindset contractors should have going into the interview to make sure they're looking at it with real eyes and authentic eyes, so you don't make a mistake that will compound as the days and weeks go by.
Yeah, that's a good question, Kyle. Managers should never be hiring to fill a seat. And whenever managers get desperate to fill a seat, their guard comes down and they lower their standards. So the question every manager asks him or herself is, who needs who? Do I need this person or do they need me? And the answer is it should be mutual, right? They should want to work here as much as I would like to hire them, but we want to find out whether or not they really want to work here. So one of the ways to inform this job candidate is to convey that this could be a great job for you. However, I've got to warn you that I have high standards and working here will not be easy. Now, if you make the cut, that'll be great. But I just want to forewarn you. My expectations are very high. I have a list. You'll be held accountable for your work. And let the person know they're getting into a serious job. This is not fun and games.
Right.
And with that candidate, there should be a piece of paper with the list of expectations that job candidate, if they get hired, they sign that piece of paper. And then the manager signs it in the presence of that person. And then the manager can then convey, now we have our signatures on these expectations. And
no ambiguity, right? No ambiguity.
Right.
Everyone knows what the expectations are and
Right.
what's expected of you.
It's very, very clear.
Yeah.
So we should never make the job appear to be easy because it's not.
Right.
Our workload is often the result of the weather.
Right.
So if you get a hot day, it comes out of nowhere.
Right.
And you're rescheduling calls and you're working the phones and it's nuts.
I also think like, when you're talking about that, when you say this is a hard job and it's not going to be easy, it challenges the right type of person. The right type of person goes, I can rise to the occasion. I can step up and I can do it. And the people you don't want might slink away a little bit. And it might help you decide right there or decide for you.
Absolutely. And that's also why you're asking the question about a recent problem that they've solved. You want, because that thinking you just conveyed about, wow, this job sounds challenging. I want to be up to the challenge. That's a critical thinking skill.
Right.
That's a skill that says, I don't know how to do that job yet, but man, I'm going to figure it out. And that's the tenacity and the perseverance that we look for.
Gotcha. Well, Steve, you delivered again. That's a lot of great information. You never let us down.
You ask great questions, Kyle.
I do what I can. If people want to learn more about your company, or maybe they want you to show up at their place of business to do some training, kind of tell us where we should go.
Sure. My last name is on my shirt. It's also my website. So it's kasha.com. My phone number is 610-853-9836. And give me a call for any reason. I love speaking to my clients. Sometimes a service manager will phone me 5 minutes before his weekly meeting and say, Steve, I need an idea. And I'll pull something out of current events, a story, and it just works. Make the call. And that's the way my clients get their return on investment.
Great. All right. Well, we appreciate the time, Steve. Always fun having you on the podcast.
My pleasure. Thank you, Kyle.